I do not encourage or condone any products, actions, or behaviors shown in this video. All videos are produced in a safe, professional, and controlled environment. Please do not attempt to replicate any actions performed during the video. All actions are performed by professionals. Relative amount of hype around plant medicines in this world. Lots of buzzwords being thrown about around these reality shifting experiences, and I think that they are attractive to a certain type of man for certain reasons, and I can't touch on exactly why that is for every man, but I can share with you why they were attractive to me and how the principles and values I live by led me down the path to a psychedelic experience, and share with you what happened, what I got from it, and whether or not I would suggest experimenting it with it yourself, because it without a doubt unboxed many aspects of my personality. It shook the very fabric of reality as I experience it, and it's still an event that I draw from today. So whilst I know it's not for everybody, I want to talk about it because it was a pivotal role in my unboxing journey, and the purpose and goal of this channel is to help unbox the king that lives inside of you. So let this be a resource, and let's dive into story time. So I'm like 26 or 27, and I'm living in Medellin in Colombia with a couple of friends. We're doing the internet business. We're all in on freedom and living life on our own terms. And we'd been there for about 6 weeks, and for the previous 2 years I'd been working with a coach. He was a authenticity, spiritual business coach. He had lots of different hats that he wore, and he played many roles for me, but I'd been working with him for about 2 years, and he messaged me one day saying, I'm hosting a retreat in Colombia in a city called Cali, which was about 3 hours south of where we were in Medellin. And he said words to the effect of, I can't make this happen without you and your friend who was also one of his clients, and he needed $2,000 in the next 6 hours to make it happen. So we sent him $2,000, and then about 6 days later we got a bus down, stayed overnight, and then we did his retreat, which is a story for another time because it was again another pivotal event. Took a lot from that. But as part of his retreat and the way that the hostel bundled it together, they offered us a Jopo ceremony, and I was offered that on the way down. We got a text on the bus down, and I was like, we're in. For me, it was an easy yes, because about 5 years prior to being on that bus in Medellin was the day that I was diagnosed with cancer. And from that point moving forward, I adopted a framework in life that essentially encouraged me to just say yes to every opportunity that came across my door. And I lived that way for about a decade. And this was like right in the middle of that. So it was not even a question. It was $50. After the event, it would be at the hostel. There was really no reason to say no for me. I also think a big part of that mindset of saying yes to many opportunities is because I started to seek what I perceived as the truth. Because when I had that life-shifting, life-pivoting moment, it kind of brought down the walls and pulled the rug from underneath a lot of the beliefs and values I had and how I interpreted reality, because I did everything I was told, and that's where I ended up. So my perception of reality had shifted to where I was seeking what I thought was the truth, and this came into my timeline. And I didn't know too much about psychedelics or plant medicines before it, but I presume that's why it manifested and came into my reality, because it was a way of experiencing a different truth, which we're going to get into in just a minute. So the ceremony actually begins 24 hours before you meet the shaman, and from that point you're not supposed to eat any food. And then from 12 hours out, you don't drink any water. Both of those were challenging for me. I had never really, except for the retreat I'd just been on where we were fasting. Before that, I'd never fasted before. So 12 hours after already fasting on the retreat was challenging. But the water fast, I'd never done that long. And this is Colombia in the middle of summer, so it's hot and it's humid. And that was challenging for me. So the ceremony actually started then, and the shaman turned up, and we went down into the basement around 8 p.m. The next 4 or so hours, it's essentially a build-up to actually taking the medicine. And the build-up, I'm cautious to reveal all of the details because I have respect for the ceremony, but the build-up involves a lot of ingestion of nicotine because of the way that it stimulates the body, and as he said, grounded us into the moment. So we're passing around these ginormous hand-rolled cigarettes. there's a different smoking pattern that you do. There's this nicotine-derived chew gum that you do as well. So obviously we haven't drank for 12 hours. This is dehydrating you more and more. And then the shaman starts sharing instructions, and he doesn't speak any English, so he's got 2 aides with him. One is his translator, and he's sharing intentions and what to expect. And it starts off like, I guess, just pretty loud and pretty scary, because he starts talking about how that you can get trapped in this other realm, how there may be demons and spirits that you'll face there, and it's gradually building, and obviously we're getting more dehydrated, more tired. The anticipation is growing as to what is this going to entail, and I definitely was like, man, this is pretty worrying, and I think if I hadn't paid I probably would have pulled out, but I was already in. And then he instructs us that he's going to do it first to test the strength of the medicine, and we have to watch and observe. And this guy ingests it. It's a snorted substance, and he just, for the next 45 minutes, maybe an hour, he's like convulsing. There's vomit involved, there's gargling, there's shaking, sweating, yelling, and it's pretty intimidating. But then he organises us into 2 different groups, and I was in the first group, and it was time to begin. So I'm in the first group, and you basically take it in turns, everybody in the circle, you go around, and then it gets to my turn, and so you walk up really slowly to the front, the altar that they've set up, and then the shaman kind of eyes you up, and then he breaks up a certain amount that I guess he perceives is the right amount of medicine for you, and it's like a real big, like Hollywood, it's black, and there's this bone that you sniff it through, and then you do it, and he encourages you have to finish the whole plate, so there's no like half sniffs, and I had to go back twice, and then you walk really slowly back to your place, you sit down, and then the trip begins. And I think that there was a naive part of me that up until probably about 2 hours before I did it that thought it was going to be pleasurable, and then I obviously saw the shaman and realised it was not going to be pleasurable. And I always thought that that's what it would be, because previous to that experience, hallucinogens, psychedelics, all of that had been blissful experiences, fun, removing experiences, but this I knew was going to probably be a challenge. And then the trip begins. I don't know how long after ingestion, maybe 30-40 minutes. And again, I am not going to try and put into words what it's like, because it's pretty impossible, but without a doubt you do go to a different realm of some description. The experience is very hot, and the realm that you're in is very bright and red, and I saw certain things, but it definitely wasn't as visual or as rewarding as I thought it would be. I thought that would be the actual ingestion of the medicine, and the trip and the high would be the experience. But then it finished, and I was a little bit underwhelmed, and I was really dehydrated by this point. All that sweating, vomit, and there's still no drinking allowed. And then I had to watch the second round of people go, which was interesting to observe them physically feeling what I'd felt in the other realm, seeing their bodies react in a way that I think mine would have. That was really interesting, and seeing the shaman go around, because when I was in that other realm and it was hot, occasionally there'll be like a blast of wind, and then nice sounds that would be soothing. And then when I watched the shaman with the other people, he was going around and blowing on them and shaking his different tools. So I was like, maybe he can interpret the other realm. It was pretty mad. But then it finishes, and I thought, we'd finish, we'd get off to bed. I haven't eaten now for nearly 30-something hours, not drank for 16, 18 maybe, after all that. But what really happens is we just sit around in this big circle, and the shaman is just talking for hours and hours, and he's got a translator, and he's talking so fast, and she's just gets to a point where she's just picking up certain words and saying them, and it doesn't even really make any cognitive sense. And whilst this is happening, I'm just getting crazier and crazier sitting there. My friend that I'm with is getting riled up too. We're like, man, we got to leave this. And after the sun's coming up through the basement, we can see the sun coming up, so I'm obviously calculating time. And what's triggering me more is at the front there's people listening to him and hanging off every word this guy's saying, and they're like, I could tell that they're really into it, and I'm like, he's not even making any sense. It literally just doesn't make no sense. So eventually, me and my friend rustled up the courage to just leave. I left. I went back up the hostel, 4th floor, got into bed and was like, oh my God, this is nice. He did the same, my friend, and then we were probably in bed for like 15 minutes, not together. And then my other friend came up, who was in the ceremony, and he was like, he woke us up and he was like, the ceremony's not finished, you've got to come back down. He's got to close up the energy circle and then you can go. And I was like, all right. And I was like triggered. I didn't want to go, but I went and we got it wrapped up. We spoke for like 20 minutes and he did this thing and then it was finished. And then we went back up and thankfully got to sleep for like 90 minutes. After a quick nap, I went down into the lobby of the hostel, and to my surprise, the shaman was still there, and he looked pretty awake. He looked pretty vibrant, you know, considering what we'd just been through for like that many hours. And I was just getting a coffee, and his aide, the translator, she came up and she was asking me questions about like, did I enjoy it? How did I get on? And I said it was, you know, all right. I told her that I felt a bit underwhelmed by the actual experience, that it was kind of like just scary. I didn't feel like I got much from it. And then I said to her, I was like, and all the talking afterwards, I was like, that was difficult for me. And she was like, yeah, he never does that. He does this every day, by the way, or like 6 days a week, I think she said. Does one of those ceremonies 6 days and partakes 6 days. And I was like, whoa. And she was like, and I travel with him. This is what I do full time. And he never talks that long, ever. The ceremony is pretty much always done within an hour and a half after the last round. And I was like, that's weird. And she was like, and he wasn't even making much sense. He was just seemingly talking for the sake of talking. I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then I went over and just sat with the shaman for a while, and the translator's helping me talk to him, and I'm asking him questions. And I asked him, I was like, how does this work? Like, I didn't feel like I got anything from it. How does this work? And he said that this is the medicine of medicines. This isn't just a one-time thing. He said, as soon as the medicine is within your being, that's it forever. You're with it now. It's working with you if you want it to, in a way that you won't be able to understand until you learn more about it. And he says that's why he continues to do it. And he was telling me how his consciousness is 600 years old because it was passed down through generations. And I was like, so I was like, so that part where you were talking a lot, and this is getting translated, so I don't understand how much he actually understands of this because it can be lost in translation. But I was basically asking him, I was like, that part where you spoke afterwards for long was really triggering for me. Did you do that intentionally to help with my healing or my journey? And he heard that, and then he like paused for a while, and then he just like gave me this like smile, like, I don't know how to do it. I can remember it, but I can't replicate it. And he just gave me this smile, and then he drank his coffee and just walked off and got in a taxi. And his aides just like shuttled after him and picked all his bags up and shuttled after him, and then he was gone. No goodbye. And I was like, was he waiting to tell me that and then leave? And for those hours where he just kept talking and talking were really triggering for me, because I just have always struggled to listen to people talk up until that point. You know, like being at school, spoken at, being at university, spoken at. I was kind of over that in my life. I just didn't want to listen to people, and especially because he wasn't making too much sense. But I had an issue with listening. But since that whole experience and him talking like that and then having the revelations unwind, I've just naturally been able to listen more to people and hear people out, especially if they're coming from a authentic place like he was. So that's added a lot of value to my life. So this guy leaves, and most of the people that I'm with on the retreat leave the hostel that same evening, but I decide to stay on for a few more weeks and just hang out and decompress and kind of digest the whole event, because even though when I relay it like that, it doesn't sound like a lot happened, in that moment when he smiled and left like that, it just sort of shifted my whole reality. It was mad to hear that guy, that's really how he lives his life, you know, like he doesn't have a job, he doesn't have a career, he doesn't have any of the things that at the time I was kind of rebelling against. I thought that was like, I was rebellious, you know. I didn't want a career, I was working for myself, I was doing the internet thing. But this guy was even like further detached from that. He was going around 6 days a week all throughout South America, but also sometimes in Europe he's doing these ceremonies. Like, how does he get that, how does he make that happen in Europe? how do you get that through the border? There's just so many questions, and the way that he just left, the fact that he can do that physically, and the way that he just opened the door to basically the medicine is of your own understanding. And he said actually to be wary with how many lessons you share from the medicine, because if you share too many with too many people, then it reduces in efficacy. So there's aspects of that event that I took so much from and continue to do so that I'm not going to share for those reasons. But what I can share, and what the whole point of this video I guess is that sometimes when you're in a box, the only way to, and you feel like you're not living where you want to live, you're not doing what you want to do, sometimes you've got to actually see and spend time with people who are not in the same frequency. That's what it really did for me. Was it took me from like this level of understanding to spending time with being a man that was living that truth. It doesn't matter if you disagree with that. It doesn't matter if the ceremony was what it was. That's really what he's doing with his life. And he had a level of purpose and service that I've not met many other people that are like that. And even though it's been like 4 or 5 years, I feel I'm more on that trajectory every day, you know. And he says his consciousness is 600 years old, thinking that way. So I was like, oh, maybe it will take me just a few years, and maybe that's what he meant by once the medicine begins, it never stops. And one of the last pieces of this whole experience that I want to talk on is how this just fell and manifested into my reality. It was not something I was actively looking for. I wasn't Googling like method to solve this issue. And I was just more operating under the principle of I'm going to find the truth and I'm going to live free on my terms. And having that as like a central understanding and principle and concept energy that I have been living from for a lot of years, this event just happened and then exponentially led to more growth. That's why I'm sharing that with you, is because I think that the world currently there's a lot of strategy. This method will get you here. Do this for this many days and get this, like really understandable and logical solutions to not being where you're at. But I'm real big on concepts, especially self-concepts and first principles like that, seeking truth, being open to who you are, because then how it actually manifests is going to be exactly as it should be rather than what your ego thinks it should be. And that served me very well. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't go looking for plant medicine if this story has resonated or it's on your mind, but at the same time, maybe it's just a buzzword that people use now. I think for clicks, I don't know. I don't see it that way. I see it more as an energy that will arrive if you need it and if you have the right intentions. So I know that maybe is confusing, but I'm cautious to just sound as if I'm all in on the plant medicines and everybody should go and do them. It's like, have the intentions to live free, and if that finds its way into your reality, you get a message from somebody connects you to somebody and that's there, it's like, well, maybe it's worth pursuing. And if you are there and you need support, I don't have too much experience within the individual's plant medicines to tell you what they do if it's for you, but the decision making to get there, if you need support, that's what our community is all about. It's what our program is all about, is helping you make empowered decisions. And that does come off the back of what I learned that day, because that's really what the shaman did. He facilitated, gave me the tools, the space and the guidance, and then let me figure it out. And that's what we do with our coaching now, rather than it be I have the answers, Kay has the answers, somebody has the answers. It's like we just facilitate and let you find your own answers, because it's more beneficial, more transformative and just more effective. So that's my account and my experience with plant medicines. That's the only time I've ever done it, and I'm not looking to go back and do it again anytime soon. If it finds its way into my reality, then it's something I may participate in, but that felt like enough medicine for one lifetime for me, and it continues to work. So take from that what you will. Ask questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And if there's any aspects of this story you want to hear more on, help me elaborate and share more value with you, I'd love to do that. But I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for watching. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and live free as the king you are meant to be, and I'll see you next time. Much love. Peace.